Right up to the maker's mark. Hi, it's Todd of Todd's Workshop here, and today we're going to be looking at a really special little crossbow. And when I say little, I really do mean little. This is a regular kind of crossbow prod. 2 foot, 24 inches, 60 centimetres across, give or take. This one is tiny. So here we go. The Assassin's Bow. We'll come back to that. Basically, it's an all-steel construction of a type of crossbow that was, I can't say popular, but it was around in the early 17th century, really, around 1600 and a little bit beyond, maybe, I guess, a little bit before. There are not very many in existence, I mean, maybe 10 or something, of these sort of things. They're all quite different. One thing that they usually are is really quite decorated. There's a couple of more plain ones. One of those ones is in the Leeds Armouries, Royal Armouries, Leeds, and I've based this one loosely on that. What is very clear about the Leeds one is it's got a very strange little trigger block on the top here that looks, to all intents and purposes, like an industrial switch, and it's got little screws on the side and things. I just didn't want to do that because, although it is an original piece, it just doesn't look like it, really. What were they for? Well, they're assassin's bows, of course, aren't they? Well, maybe they're not. The Victorians, guilty of many, many things in the arms and armour community, of relabelling things and coming up with all sorts of fictions, christened these things assassin's bows because they looked at them and they thought, well, they're small, they're quite powerful, must be for killing people. Personally, I don't think that's the case at all, because there are not going to be very many crossbow makers in Genoa or somewhere who are able to make one of these things. And they're also often very, very highly decorated. So what that means is that you're going to be involving quite a few people in the manufacture of them, including jewellers, the actual crossbow makers themselves, smiths for doing these, if they split the trades up, I don't know, casting people, thread cutters. There'll be lots and lots of people involved in the manufacture of these things, which means you're leaving a massive trail of people who all know, if you're caught with this, if the assassin is caught with it, you know, a couple of thumb screws later, who made it for you? Well, it was Jose, wasn't it? Bam, you know, you just follow the trail back. It's not difficult. So for me, I don't think it was an assassin's bow. It just doesn't make sense. The other thing about it is they're inherently not that powerful. So 212 pounds in draw weight. So not to be messed about with. But on the other hand, the bolt is very light. It's only 7 grams, which is, looking at my cheat sheet, 108 grains in weight. So we'll put it through the chrono later and see what kind of energy we get off it. It's not going to be a killing weapon, that is a dead cert. But they are good fun. The bow is loaded in pretty much the same principle that they all have, I think, which is that there is a screw thread. This time it's in a cylinder, like I said, sometimes in a wing nut. You push that forward, engage the trigger, so you have to set that, put a little bit of tension on it, and now it's all set. So that's fine. Now then, the easiest way to load it is actually to hold it here. However, if you had a trigger failure, I don't know what would happen. Obviously, you haven't got a projectile penetrating your hand, but that steel coming back with you in full contact, I think it would break bones in your hand. I think it would be horrendous. So what I do is I always very carefully just pop my thumb over the top here. I'm not holding the trigger here. It's just a place that if the bow goes off, it's not going to hurt me. So I'm not going to do a full draw. The carriage here would come all the way back, so I can dry shoot it at this distance here. Now, again, we've got just a hanging clip here, which is in bronze, little bronze lion on the bottom. If you put a trigger underneath, and there is in fact one I've seen which has got a trigger underneath, but if you put a trigger underneath, you are holding it, if you're holding it single-handed, effectively by the trigger. And I think that there'd be a high chance of the bow getting shot. So because of that, most of them have got a top trigger, and I've just followed the pattern here with a top trigger here. So you can now shoot it one-handed, just thumb on the trigger, and it's as simple as that. Taking the bow apart is actually a very simple thing. So, of course, none of the pivots for the trigger system are visible here, but there is a single hole at the back here, and that is what just here, and that is what is used to hold the screw thread into the system. So you can line that, just shoot the thing, so you can line that hole up, and there's just a little pin that pokes out. So now that part is separate. So then what you do is you just pull up, pull it back, and I have the main carriage out. Now you can strip the bow out as well. There's no problem stripping the bow out. There's just a couple of retaining pins here and here. But actually, of course, anybody who's done engineering knows that a friction fit with a pin trying to hold something in so that it absolutely cannot move, but it can go in, is quite difficult. So the pins are just flexed slightly to get them in. And I can tap them out, but it's just a bit fiddly to get them back in. But they come out if we need to. There's a screw here attaching the bronze belt clip. Screws were not very common, but they did make them, and particularly on high status items, because having a screw in itself is an expensive item, so it just shows a little bit more niceness, a little bit more money being thrown at something. And they certainly had them, and they certainly used them, so I've just used one there. Right, now, this trigger system, I'll just hold it on its side. So you can see that's the hole, which is for the screw thread retaining pin. Then we have 4 more holes here. That's the axle for the nut. That is the axle for the intermediate sear. That's the axle for the trigger. And this one here doesn't have any apparent purpose, but actually it's just a stop pin to stop the intermediate sear here dropping too far down. So it just keeps it up where you can easily reset it. And again, when it comes to the setting, there's actually a little bulbous lump on here. That's not accidental, because what happens then is you can just drag it with your thumb, and that allows you to set the trigger very easily. So if it was flat and smooth, it would be much more problematic. So then all you need to do is just poke the pins out. Just got to be a bit careful. And then we have it. So that's the main carriage. And then these are the components for the trigger. So we have the nut, then the intermediate sear here, and then the trigger sear. So you can see how the system operates. So basically, if you pull the trigger back, that then allows the nut to rotate that intermediate sear and push it out the way into that position there. So it's a very straightforward system, and it works very nicely. I've messed about with various top trigger systems, and that really is the one that I've got to work very well and very reliably, to be honest. Time to start shooting this little baby. So we'll load it up, trigger set. That's it. So it just helps. I can put a little bit of load on the trigger there until such a point as the system is set. Now, in terms of loading it, it's obviously a screwdriver action. It's not totally easy. I haven't greased this yet. I haven't greased it simply because I need to do a finish clean on it, and there'll be grease everywhere. So until it's actually about to go off to the customer, I won't bother. But bolt goes on. The bolt is 8mm. It looks to be about 10 centimeters, 4 inches long, 8mm diameter. And then we'll just reload again. So in terms of, is it a civil defence thing? That might be a question that's thrown out there in the comments. Well, you can see from this it takes a little bit of time to load. So no, it's not civil defence. The other thing as well is, you know, the bolt groove itself is not massively big. That's always going to cause problems with the bolt bouncing out, you know, if you're under attack or something like that. But anyway, here we go, and we'll go again. So that's it. So it's simple enough to use. It will get a little bit easier when I grease the thing up, but otherwise it's a beautiful little thing. Balestrino crossbow. So we'll go and have a mess about with the energies and just see what we get out of it. $128, and my previous was 114. Time for some simple maths. I got two readings. It was a bit problematic, I think, because of the fluoros. 114 and 128 feet per second. So let's just call that 121 feet per second. Now, I do metric. Sorry, all you US guys. I'm going to convert that to meters per second, which equals 36.9 meters per second. That's not bad, actually, for something this size. So I square that, equals 1362. I multiply that by the mass. Now I'm doing it in kilos, so it's 7 grams. So obviously a gram being a thousandth of a kilo. The grain weight was 108 grains for you US guys out there, or you shooters, which gives me 9.5. Now I halve that because it's half mv squared, divided by 2, 4.6 joules, right? 4.6 joules. That's not really a killing number. Now, what I can do is multiply that, looking at my cheat sheet, by 0.738. That gives you a whopping 3.4 foot-pounds of power. So I don't know what it's like in the US, but in the UK, a standard air rifle, a .177 or .22, is 12 foot-pounds. A pistol is 6 foot-pounds. That's the maximum that we're allowed here. So that is, well, it's 1/3 of an air rifle power, to give you an idea. So an air rifle is not considered, a .177 or .22 air rifle is not considered a killing weapon. And this is 1/3 of that. Unless you're using poison darts, I think we can count this out as being an assassin's bow. Yeah, they could have used poison darts, but it's like I said at the beginning, really, any assassin who's caught with that, the trail's going to go straight back to the guy who's made it. The guy who's made it is going to be a fool if he's selling it to an assassin, because his life is on the line. And he's putting his life into the hands of some other guy that he probably doesn't even know or has met before. The level of decoration that's usually found in them is very high. So again, why would you decorate something that's for an assassin? I honestly believe that they were powerful, great fun, slightly dangerous, executive toys. You know, nice bit of after dinner archery. You know, shoot your mate in the arse, all that kind of stuff. Very funny. I think that's what they're for, really. Going to see how accurate this thing is. It is, it looks to be about 3 meters, 3 yards. So I guess you can get close enough to your target for that. Man-sized target. It's just a t-shirt up there. So here we go, loading up. So they're not super quick to load, but interesting nonetheless. So I'll try and aim at the same point. Interestingly, there was a full-size crossbow loaded with a screw jack as well. I've never made one. One day I might, but I don't like the look of it, to be honest. I haven't got a great deal of interest in trying to make one. So, nothing else, we can get a speed trial off this one. So it's a little bit of a faff loading, setting the trigger and so on, but you get used to it. So I was aiming nominally for the same kind of place. It's going to be inaccurate, but you know, it's going to upset your day, isn't it, really? So, as is traditional, on YouTube, we'll have a bit of gratuitous fruit shooting. Just go and fetch that. So, I've just fetched my apple back, and that's what it's done to it. So, I don't know what the apple test shows us really, but it's kind of fun. But it does say that I don't want to get shot by it. But is it going to kill you? No, it's not. I'm going to sum up what we've learned today. I've learned some new stuff. I hope you have too. This is an assassin's bow. It was called that by the Victorians. It was not called that at the time. So they've named it, presumably because they thought it was powerful, and what else was it for? Maybe the concept of executive toys had passed them by. Anyway, I think it was an executive toy. Usually very highly decorated, complicated to make obviously, clearly expensive, high status items. Not very powerful. This one is 212 pounds in draw weight, 2-inch 50mm draw. It comes in at 4.5 joules. Was it 4.6 joules? Or that's 3.5 foot-pounds in energy. It's just not very much. It will penetrate skin. It just about penetrated 12mm ply, actually, just poked out the back. So that was quite impressive, 1/2 inch ply. It will penetrate clothing and go into the ply beyond, but it's not going to be deadly. It's about a third that of a UK legal air rifle, a 177 or a 22. So the power is not deadly power. Yes, they could be poisoned. Just doesn't make sense for me. I've enjoyed it. I hope you have too. And, you know, we managed to get our final little bit of gratuitous fruit vandalism in. So that's what it does to an apple at point blank. I wouldn't want to be the apple, but it's not going to kill me. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Assassin's Bow by me, Todd, from Todd's Workshop. Thanks.